For years, I paid everyone's bills without question, until the one night I needed help and made a call that exposed what they really thought of me when I was no longer useful. The first time I realized people saw me as dependable, it felt better than any raise I ever got. I was 28, sitting in my small apartment with a second-hand couch and a kitchen table I had put together myself, when my sister Claire called me in tears. Her voice was shaking. She said she was 2 weeks behind on rent. Her hours had been cut. She did not know what she was going to do. I did not hesitate. I did not even ask how it happened. I opened my banking app while she was still explaining and told her I would transfer the money. I remember the silence on the other end of the line when she realized I meant it. Then came the relief in her voice. She told me I had saved her. She said she did not know what she would do without me. I hung up feeling 10 feet tall. It was not just about the money. It was about being needed. About being the one who could step in when things fell apart. Growing up, I was always the quiet one. My older cousins were louder. My younger brother got into sports. I learned early that if I wanted to matter, I had to be useful. So when Claire thanked me, when she told our parents what I had done, and my dad clapped me on the back and said he was proud of the man I had become, something inside me locked into place. This is what family does, I told myself. A few months later, my parents fell behind on their electric bill. My dad's hours at the plant had been cut. My mom tried to brush it off when she mentioned it over dinner, but I could hear the worry underneath. I did not wait for them to ask. I covered it quietly. They protested at first, but not very hard. Mom hugged me in the driveway that night and said, "You are our rock." My father nodded, serious and grateful. I drove home with the windows down, letting the cool air hit my face, feeling like I had finally earned my place in this family. Then there was Mark. Mark and I had been friends since high school. He had always been the risk taker, the guy who jumped from job to job chasing something bigger. One evening he showed up at my place looking worn down. He said he just needed a little help to get back on his feet. A loan, nothing major. He swore he would pay me back in a couple of months. I trusted him without question. Why would I not? We had history. Loyalty mattered to me. When I handed him the check, he gripped my shoulder and said I was the only one who ever showed up for him. That line stuck with me. The only one who shows up. At the time, I wore that like a badge of honor. It did not feel like sacrifice. It felt like building something invisible but strong. Trust, connection, belonging. Every time someone came to me, I told myself it meant they respected me. They believed in me. They saw me as stable, reliable, necessary. The requests came slowly at first, spread out enough that I never felt the weight of them all at once. A car repair here, a medical bill there, a short-term loan until payday. I kept spreadsheets, told myself I was being smart about it. And each time someone thanked me, each time they promised they would never forget, I believed them. What I did not notice back then was how the tone of those calls was already changing. Less hesitation, less embarrassment, more assumption. I brushed it off. I told myself that comfort meant closeness, that if they felt safe asking, it meant I had done something right. I did not see the shift happening. Not yet. But looking back now, I can trace it to those early days. To the pride I felt every time someone said, "I knew you would come through." Because once people decide you are the one who always comes through, they stop asking if you can. And that is where everything started to change. If I am honest, there was a part of me that started expecting the calls. Not because I wanted people to struggle, but because every time my phone lit up with a family member's name, I knew exactly what role I would play. The fixer, the steady one, the backup plan. Claire called again about 6 months after the rent situation. This time it was her car. Transmission trouble. She said she had tried everything. She sounded exhausted, but not embarrassed. There was no long pause before she asked. No awkward build-up. Just the problem, laid out clean and simple. I transferred the money before she finished explaining. She said thank you, of course. But it sounded different. Less relief. More relief mixed with expectation, like she had known how the conversation would end before it began. My parents started doing something similar. Instead of saying they were behind on something, they would mention it casually. Dad would say, "We are figuring out the roof situation," and glance at me. Mom would talk about how tight things were this month. The first few times, I jumped in quickly. Eventually, they stopped pretending it was accidental. One Sunday dinner, Dad just looked at me and asked if I could handle it. No explanation. No details. Just that. And I did. I told myself I was lucky to have the ability. I had worked hard for my career. I had no kids, no big expenses. What was the point of having money if I could not use it to take care of my own? Mark never paid me back. At first, he gave updates. Said a job interview went well. Said a check was coming. Then the updates slowed. When I brought it up gently, he laughed and said I knew he was good for it. I nodded, even though something small and tight had started forming in my chest. I kept helping anyway. I justified it every time. They are family. They are friends. They would do the same for me. Loyalty means showing up without keeping score. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet thought started to grow. If I ever needed help, would they even know how to show up? The first time I almost said no, it caught me off guard. It was late. I had just gotten home from work after one of those long weeks that makes you question every life choice. I had been passed over for a promotion I thought was mine. Not because I lacked the numbers, but because someone else had better timing. That was how my manager put it. I was sitting in the dark, eating takeout straight from the container when my mom called. She did not ask how I was. She did not ask about work. She launched straight into how Dad's truck had broken down and how they were not sure how they would manage. I stared at the wall while she talked. For the first time, I let the silence stretch. I wanted her to ask how I was doing. I wanted her to notice something in my voice. She did not. Finally, she said, almost gently, "You have always been the strong one." It was not a compliment. It was a reminder. I told her I would take care of it. After I hung up, I felt something new. Not pride. Not even resentment. Just tired. Around that same time, Claire started referring to my help as if it was part of her planning. She would say things like, "Once you cover this month, I can catch up next month." Not if. Once. Mark got bolder too. He invited me out to dinner one night. Picked a place I knew he could not afford, and when the check came, he looked at me with that same grin from years ago. The one that used to mean gratitude. This time it meant assumption. I paid. Of course I did. On the drive home, I tried to tell myself that this was temporary, that things would level out, that everyone goes through rough patches. But the requests were no longer occasional storms. They were the climate. Then something happened I did not see coming. My company announced restructuring. My department would be downsized. My position was under review. For the first time in years, I felt the ground shift under my own feet. And suddenly, that quiet question in the back of my mind was not hypothetical anymore. If I needed help, who would I call? When they finally let me go, it was packaged in corporate language. They thanked me for my contributions. They assured me it was not performance-related. They called it an organizational shift. I carried my box of desk items out to my car in broad daylight, trying to look calm while my chest felt hollow. I told almost no one at first. For years, I had been the stable one, the reliable one, the man with the steady paycheck and the emergency savings everyone leaned on. Losing my job felt like breaking character. But bills do not care about pride. I had some savings. Not as much as I should have, considering how much I had given away over the years. Still, I told myself I would land on my feet. I had skills, experience, contacts. Then my water heater burst. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I walked into the hallway and felt water soaking into my socks. Within hours, I was staring at an estimate that would wipe out a painful chunk of what I had left. That was the moment something shifted from uncomfortable to urgent. For the first time in my adult life, I needed help. I sat at my kitchen table with my phone in my hand for almost 20 minutes before I called Claire. I told myself it made sense. I had covered her rent more than once. Helped with her car. This was temporary. Just a short-term loan until I secured another position. She answered on the third ring, cheerful. I explained the situation carefully. I even softened it, told her it was just a tight month. I waited for her to say, "Of course. You have done so much for me." Instead, she sighed. She said things were tight for her too. She mentioned a vacation she had already booked. She said she wished she could, but she just could not swing it right now. I nodded, even though she could not see me. After we hung up, I stared at the wall the same way I had the night my mom called about the truck. Then I called Mark. He did not answer. I texted. He responded hours later, apologizing. Said he was in the middle of something. Promised to call back. He never did. I told myself it was just timing. Bad luck. People are busy. But for the first time, the silence on the other end of the line felt louder than any thank you I had ever received. And I still had not called my parents. Calling my parents felt heavier than the others. I do not know why I believed that conversation would go differently. Maybe because they were the ones who had called me their rock. Maybe because I had covered more of their bills than I could even remember. Somewhere in my head, I still believed that counted for something. My mom answered. I told her the truth this time. No softening it. I explained about the layoff, the water heater, the tight stretch I was in. I even forced a small laugh and said I just needed a little breathing room. There was a pause. Not the shocked kind. Not the worried kind. Just a quiet, calculating pause. She said she was sorry to hear about the job. Then she asked if I had been applying aggressively enough. If I had considered that maybe I should have saved more instead of being so generous all the time. That word stuck. Generous. As if it had been a personality quirk. A hobby. Not years of stepping in when they needed me. I told her I had savings, just not enough to handle everything at once. I asked if they could help with a small loan, just until I got back on my feet. She lowered her voice and said, "Your father and I are not in a position to rescue you." Rescue? I almost laughed. I reminded her, gently, of the truck, the roof, the electric bill. I said I was not asking for rescue, just support. She said those were different. They had responsibilities. A house, medical expenses. Life is harder when you are older, she said. Then she added something that hit harder than anything else. You chose to live alone. You chose not to build a family. These are the trade-offs. It was subtle, but clear. You are on your own. Dad got on the phone briefly. His tone was clipped. He said I would figure it out. I always do. Then he reminded me that being independent was something I had always been proud of. It did not feel like encouragement. It felt like dismissal. When I hung up, the apartment felt quieter than it ever had. For years, I had believed I was building something stronger than money. That every transfer, every check, every sacrifice was stitching us tighter together. But as I sat there, staring at my phone, I realized something simple and brutal. They had never seen my help as something that created obligation. They had seen it as something that confirmed my role. And when I stepped outside that role, even for a moment, there was nothing there waiting for me. After those calls, I stopped reaching out. Not dramatically, not with some grand announcement. I just stopped. At first, I told myself it was temporary. I needed to focus on finding work, tighten my spending, handle the water heater. I picked up freelance projects, sold a few things I did not really need. I adjusted quietly. What surprised me was how quickly the world kept spinning without anyone checking in. Claire texted a week later, but not about me. She sent a screenshot of a concert she wanted to attend and said, half joking, that if I were not so broke now, I would have treated her. Mark finally called back after nearly 2 weeks. Not to ask how I was doing. He wanted advice about a new business idea. He talked for 20 minutes straight before asking, almost as an afterthought, how things were on my end. I said I was managing. He said he knew I would. That was my thing. My parents did not call at all. That was the part that kept me up at night. Not anger, not even disappointment. Just the realization that if I did not initiate contact, nothing happened. For years, I had been the one sending money before they asked. The one checking in. The one anticipating needs before they were spoken out loud. Without that, the line went quiet. One evening, I sat at my kitchen table going through old bank statements. I added up rough estimates. Rent covered, bills paid, loans never repaid, car repairs, medical costs. Small transfers that added up to something much larger than I had ever allowed myself to see clearly. It was not just money. It was years of instinctively placing myself last. I realized something else too. None of them had ever asked how helping them affected me. Not once had someone said, "Is this hard for you?" Or "Are you sure you can afford this?" They assumed I could, because I always had. That night, for the first time, I let myself sit with a hard truth. I had trained them. Every time I rushed in, every time I absorbed the cost without complaint, I reinforced the idea that I was not someone with limits. I was a resource, and resources do not get checked on. They get used. The next morning, Claire called again. I watched the phone ring, and for the first time in my life, I let it go to voicemail. Claire left a voicemail. Her tone was light, almost playful. She said she needed a small favor, just something to get her through the month. She mentioned how stressful things had been lately. Then she added, casually, that she knew I always came through. I listened to it twice. There was no mention of my job. No question about how I was holding up. Just the familiar setup. The assumption baked right into her voice. I called her back later that evening. My heart was pounding harder than it had during any job interview I had ever had. It felt ridiculous. All I had to do was say one word. No. She answered cheerfully. launched straight into details about a credit card bill and some unexpected expense. I let her finish. I did not interrupt. Then I told her I could not help. The silence on the other end was immediate and sharp. She asked what I meant. I repeated it. Calm. Clear. I said I was not in a position to send money right now. Her tone shifted fast. Confusion first, then frustration. She reminded me of all the times I had helped before, as if those moments were proof that I should continue. I told her that was exactly the point. I did not raise my voice. I did not list numbers. I just said I needed to focus on stabilizing my own life. She accused me of changing, of becoming distant. She said it felt like I was punishing her. That word landed heavy. Punishing. As if refusing to give more was an act of aggression. I told her it was not about punishment. It was about limits. She ended the call abruptly. Within an hour, my phone lit up again. This time it was my mom. Claire had already called her. Mom said she did not understand why I was being so hard. She said family supports each other. I almost laughed at the symmetry of it. I asked her, quietly, where that support had been when I needed it. She did not answer directly. She circled around it. Said circumstances were different. Said I was stronger than the others. There it was again. Stronger. I realized in that moment that they did not see my strength as something that required care. They saw it as something they were entitled to draw from. When I hung up, I felt shaky. Not from guilt. Not exactly. From clarity. For the first time, I understood that saying no would cost me something. But continuing to say yes would cost me more. After that first no, something subtle but undeniable shifted. The calls did not stop immediately. They changed. Claire texted instead of calling. Short messages. Colder. She stopped adding the little smiley faces she used to include. When we did speak, she sounded guarded, like I had become unpredictable. Mark reached out a week later, asking if I wanted to grab dinner. I agreed, partly out of habit, partly because I wanted to see if anything felt different in person. It did. He talked about himself for most of the meal. New plans. New hustle. New angle. When the check came, he did not even glance at it. He just kept talking. I let it sit there. The silence stretched long enough that he finally noticed. He looked down, then back at me, confused. I told him calmly that we would split it. He blinked like I had just switched languages. He laughed at first. Thought I was joking. When he realized I was not, something tightened in his expression. He paid his half, but the warmth was gone. The easy comfort. The sense that I was the safety net under his feet. After that night, his messages became less frequent. My parents adjusted too, but in their own way. Instead of asking directly for money, they began sending updates about financial stress without the direct request. Almost like fishing, waiting to see if I would jump in voluntarily. I did not. The strangest part was not the pushback. It was the quiet distancing that followed. Family dinners felt different. Conversations skimmed the surface. When money topics came up, there was a careful avoidance around me, like I was now a sensitive subject. One evening, I overheard Claire telling our cousin that I had changed since losing my job. That success had made me generous, but struggle had made me selfish. Selfish. I stood in the hallway listening to that word echo in my head. For years, my generosity had been a defining trait. Something they praised. Something they relied on. The moment I redirected that energy toward myself, the label flipped. It hurt. I will not pretend it did not. But underneath the hurt was something steadier. Clarity. I started seeing the pattern fully for the first time. My value in the family system had been tied to what I provided. Stability. Money. Solutions. Without that, I was not attacked outright. I was simply less relevant. And that realization did not explode. It settled. Quiet. Heavy. Permanent. I began to understand that the real shift was not happening in them. It was happening in me. It did not happen all at once. There was no dramatic argument. No slammed doors. No speeches about betrayal. I just stopped offering. When Dad mentioned that the roof might need repairs soon, I nodded and said I hoped it worked out. I did not ask for estimates. I did not open my banking app. I let the conversation move on. When Claire talked about upgrading her apartment, I listened without calculating what it might cost me. I gave advice instead of money. She did not seem as interested in that. Mark eventually stopped calling altogether. At first, the quiet felt heavy. I had built so much of my identity around being the dependable one. Without the constant requests, I felt oddly untethered. Like I had stepped off a treadmill that had been running for years. But something else started happening too. I began sleeping better. I started tracking my own expenses with intention, not guilt. I rebuilt my savings slowly, deliberately. Each dollar felt different now, not like something waiting to be claimed, but something earned and protected. I found a new job. It was not flashy, but it was steady. The first paycheck hit my account, and for the first time in years, I did not mentally divide it up into who might need what. It was mine. The emotional shift was quieter than I expected. I did not hate them. I did not even feel the need to confront anyone. I simply stopped reaching out to fill silence. If someone called, I answered when I felt like it. If they did not, I let the distance exist. I stopped chasing connection through sacrifice. One afternoon, my mom said something that confirmed everything. We were sitting at a small family gathering, and she told a neighbor that I had always been independent, that I never really needed anyone. I smiled politely. She was wrong. I had needed them, just not financially. I had needed to believe that what I gave created something mutual. It did not. But instead of feeling angry, I felt clear. For years, I thought generosity was proof of loyalty. Now I understood something simpler. Loyalty without boundaries is not loyalty. It is self-erasure. And I was done disappearing. The real ending did not come with an apology. It came with a test. About 3 months after I stopped stepping in, Claire called again. This time her voice was different. Not casual, not entitled, just tense. She said she and her boyfriend had split. That money was tight again. That she did not know who else to call. I listened. For a brief second, the old reflex flared up inside me. The instinct to fix it. To restore balance. To be the dependable one again. But I did something I had never done before. I asked her what her plan was. She went quiet. I told her I was willing to help her think through options. Budget adjustments. Temporary work. Selling things she did not need. I said I would sit down with her and map it out. But I would not send money. She sounded hurt. Not angry this time. Just disappointed. And I understood something in that moment. She was not disappointed because I did not care. She was disappointed because I would not carry it for her. That conversation ended without resolution. No explosion. No dramatic break. Just a new reality settling in. Over time, the calls became less frequent. Family gatherings became simpler. There was less tension because there were fewer expectations attached to me. I started investing in myself instead. Therapy. Something I had always told myself I did not need because I was the stable one. I began unpacking why being needed had felt safer than being known. Why money had become my language of love. I built friendships that did not revolve around transactions. I learned to ask for small things without shame. Not money, just presence. And slowly, something inside me recalibrated. I stopped measuring my worth by how much I could absorb for other people. I stopped equating sacrifice with connection. One evening, I looked at my bank account. The number was not extraordinary, not impressive, but it was steady. More importantly, I felt steady. For years, I believed that if I gave enough, I would secure my place in the lives of the people I loved. What I finally learned was simpler. The people who value you only when you are giving do not lose you when you stop. They just reveal that they never truly had you. And for the first time in my life, that truth did not scare me. It freed me.